Picture Linda Ronstadt, legendary voice, effortless style, boundary-breaking career. But beneath the grace, there was steel. She didn't just sing, she held standards. Disrespect, unreliability, ego, those things ignited her wrath. From rock idols who grossly crossed lines, to collaborators who didn't show up, to media figures who humiliated her, these aren't mere annoyances. They're betrayals she never forgot. Each encounter cut into career, trust, or self-worth. And Linda, she didn't rant, she didn't cry, she withdrew or set boundaries and kept her dignity. If you thought she was gentle, wait until you meet the people who awakened her steel. Let's dive into the 6 artists who met Linda's unfiltered truth. In the golden age of rock, few names carried as much weight or as much chaos as Jim Morrison. The frontman of The Doors was famous for his lyrics, leather, and legendary intoxication. But for Linda Ronstadt, he was unforgettable for a much different reason. In a 1995 interview, Linda recalled Morrison as terrible, not musically but personally. She called him a mess, dirty, unkempt, wild, the very embodiment of everything she found unbearable in the male-dominated rock scene. He once arrived at a party wearing snakeskin pants he'd clearly slept in. He smelled like old beer and sweat. And then, according to Linda, he got real drunk and tried to get close, too close. Linda didn't scream, she didn't slap him. She did what she always did to people who crossed her. She walked away and never looked back. She said The Doors were a great band, but Morrison made them unbearable. What could have been a musical alliance became a permanent divide. That night solidified something in Linda. She would not play the muse to chaotic men. She wouldn't coddle egos just because they had a record deal. Morrison wasn't the only rock god who fell off her respect list, but he was one of the first to make sure he'd never get on it. And if you think that night was bad, wait until you hear about the superstar Linda trusted, who just kept letting her down. They were the dream trio: Dolly Parton, Emmylou Harris, and Linda Ronstadt. 3 powerhouse voices, 3 different styles, 1 historic collaboration. But behind the scenes of their celebrated trio album, tension simmered, and Linda never forgot it. The album was planned in the 1970s, but it took nearly a decade to finish. Why? Because, as Linda later admitted, Dolly Parton was impossible to pin down. She would cancel recording sessions, miss rehearsals, or arrive late. Not out of malice, but out of what Linda described as Dolly being Dolly. For Linda, a perfectionist known for her discipline and control in the studio, this was infuriating. She had other priorities, Linda said in a 2019 interview. She'd be off filming a movie or launching a perfume line, and we'd be waiting. While the album eventually released to acclaim, Linda was forever wary. She loved Dolly's voice, she respected her talent, but trust? That was harder. In later years, when asked if they'd reunite, Linda would pause, then say something like, "You'd have to talk to Dolly about that. I've tried." It wasn't a blow-up feud, but it was a quiet fracture, the kind that never fully heals. And if you thought scheduling was the only betrayal Linda faced, just wait until you hear about the rock star who insulted her voice and her vinyl. In 1978, Linda Ronstadt did what she always did. She took a song she loved and made it her own. The song was Allison by Elvis Costello, a sharp, poetic ballad that Linda transformed with her signature smooth vocals and lush production. But instead of gratitude, she got a slap in the face. Costello's reaction, brutal. He called her version a waste of vinyl, mocked her in interviews, said she stripped all the meaning from his work. Linda didn't fight back. She didn't call him names, but she never forgot it. Years later, she said, "I was just trying to celebrate his writing. I thought it was a compliment." But the message was clear. Elvis didn't want her covering his music, and he made sure she knew it. To Linda, this wasn't just about artistic ego. It was about being punished for being successful, for being a woman in control of her career, for daring to reinterpret a man's words without asking permission. They eventually made peace, but the scar was permanent. When asked about Costello decades later, Linda would smile politely, then pivot. That silence, it spoke louder than any comeback line. Because Linda didn't mind being rejected, she minded being disrespected. And if you thought that snub was personal, wait until you hear what happened when Linda watched her own bandmates implode from the inside out. Before they became legends, they were just Linda Ronstadt's backing band. Glenn Frey, Don Henley, Bernie Leadon, Randy Meisner. She gave them a stage, a spotlight, and a shot. And once they got it, they took off without looking back. Linda was proud of them at first. She called their sound brilliant. But as success mounted, so did ego. The Eagles became rock gods overnight, and with that came attitude. Linda later said, "They were so sweet in the beginning, then everything changed. They stopped calling, stopped checking in. And when they did speak, it was about money, control, or contracts." She wasn't bitter about the fame. She was hurt by the fallout. "They didn't owe me anything," she said in an interview, "but they could have acted like I existed." The final straw, watching them turn on each other, infighting, legal battles, backstage silence. "They were the best band I ever sang with," she confessed, "but they let it rot from the inside out." She never bad-mouthed them in the press, but she never worked with them again. Because for Linda, ego kills art, and the moment respect leaves the room, so does she. But if you thought fame could break a band, wait until you see how the media tried to break Linda herself. With cruel words and mocking headlines. It was 1995. Howard Stern, the self-proclaimed king of all media, had just mocked the tragic death of Selena, and Linda Ronstadt was listening. Appalled, she picked up the phone and called in to his show. What followed was one of the most intense clashes of her career. Linda, proud of her Mexican heritage, told Stern he was racist, disgusting, and cruel. Stern doubled down, spewing his usual shock-jock defenses. Robin Quivers, his co-host, tried to play it off. But Linda, she didn't back down for a second. She called him a coward, a parasite who used hate to stay famous. And when Stern tried to twist her words, Linda cut through it with icy precision. She later told the press, "There are some things you don't joke about. People's pain is one of them." But it didn't end there. Stern later mocked her appearance and her weight on air. Robin laughed along. It was brutal, petty, and unforgettable. Linda never went back on the show. She never responded again. She didn't have to. Because Linda Ronstadt didn't need to win the war of words, she just had to walk away with her dignity intact. Something Stern and Quivers left behind long ago. And if you think critics with microphones were cruel, wait until you meet the people who tried to erase her legacy altogether. She conquered country, she owned rock, she nailed pop, folk, opera, even mariachi. But for some reason, Linda Ronstadt was never enough for the critics. Too polished for rock, too smooth for country, too female to be taken seriously in either. From the start, Linda faced the sting of music purists, those gatekeepers who saw genre as sacred ground and artists like her as trespassers. Every time she stepped into a new space, critics questioned her right to be there. When she released What's New with Nelson Riddle, lush, orchestral American standards, the backlash was swift. Why is a pop singer doing Gershwin? They said she was chasing nostalgia, trying too hard, pretending to be something she wasn't. They said the same when she embraced her Mexican roots with Canciones de mi Padre. Too niche, too political, too ethnic, they whispered. But Linda didn't blink. She didn't beg for acceptance. She demanded it with her art. Every time they boxed her in, she burst through. She let her catalog speak louder than the critiques. And eventually they caught up. Grammys, Lifetime Achievement Awards, cultural impact beyond genre. Because Linda Ronstadt didn't need to fit into a format. She was the format. And anyone who didn't see that was already behind. Behind every genre she mastered, there were men who told Linda Ronstadt no. Men in suits, in boardrooms, behind glass in recording booths. They smiled to her face and tried to shape her career behind it. In the 70s, record execs pressured her to keep chasing hits like You're No Good and Blue Bayou. Safe, radio-friendly, and male-produced. But Linda didn't want safety. She wanted substance. So when she pushed to record Canciones de mi Padre, executives called it a career killer. Spanish language, mariachi, who would listen? Linda didn't flinch. She self-funded it, ignored their doubts, and the album became the best-selling non-English language record in US history. She turned down lucrative offers, refused to dress sexier, fired producers who didn't respect her input, and she walked away from projects, sometimes entire labels, when they didn't take her seriously. Linda said, "I was always polite. I was never obedient." Because the moment she let those men take control, she knew she'd lose her voice in more ways than one. So she didn't argue. She just made better music without them. And if you think that kind of defiance was rare, you're right. That's what made Linda Ronstadt a legend. Linda Ronstadt never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She shut people down with silence and proved them wrong with every note. The men who crossed her, gone. The critics who doubted her, forgotten. The media that mocked her, irrelevant. Because Linda didn't play for approval, she played for the art, and she never missed. So the next time someone tells you to stay in your lane, remember Linda. She built the whole damn road. Thanks for watching Legends Unfiltered, where voices like Linda's don't just sing, they echo forever.